The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You've always got time for Short Time.
Hey, it's Mario Lopez.
David Taylor.
Brent Metcalf. Johnny Hendricks. Tony Ramos. Bubba J.
Mike Golick.
Matthew Modine. The one and only Chael Sonnen. And you are listening to the one and only Short Time Wrestling Podcast by the often imitated and never duplicated Jason Bryant.
Now for the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, we welcome Frank Popolizio back to the program. And if we're talking to Frank Popolizio, there's a couple things that are probably happening. One, there's a wrestling tournament. Two, it's going to be somewhere in New York. And three, it's probably going to be awesome. Frank, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me back.
So we've got some changes to talk about. This has kind of typically been the kickoff of like that dual meet season, and the Northeast Duels has been kind of a big thing up there in the capital region of Hudson Valley Community College. And now we've got a tweak. We've got the same quality and caliber of teams, but you're putting a little spin on it. We're going away from duels. We've got these mini tournaments, very similar to how you've run your fall classic at the high school level. And let's just jump right into it. Why the change? And you know, after almost a decade of this being a great dual meet kickoff, we've got what's become the Journeymen A6, the classic, the collegiate classic.
Well, two reasons. Number one, I got a little bored, wanted to try something different, and I decided to look at the success we've been having at the high school level of running our events and the ability to make people happy with the formatting that we were doing. And I said, let's consider doing that at the collegiate level. And it just so happened this year in particular, we were set to do duels. I mean, it was a done deal. And then I realized that we lacked in balance. So it looked as if the teams that we had were all a little bit on the higher end, and we didn't have the balance that we usually have in years past. And in doing that, that makes tough scenario to have predetermined dual meets, because the coaches look at that and say, well, it's early and I'm going to have to battle 3 matches here. I shouldn't even say battle. It'd be a war. There's going to be 3 wars. And it's just a little too early to have that steep of competition, I believe, as the way their perspective is on it. So with that in mind, I said, well, if we're going to make a change, let's do it right now. And I kind of ran with it, and I had to go on a sales pitch because everybody was sold on duels at this point, and tried to convince them to go into a unique formatted individual tournament, which that's how I ended up with what we have now.
Yeah, where did you come up with this type of concept in terms of, we've seen it, but when did you bring it to your fall classic, and how receptive were the coaches going, okay, this is unlike anything really that's run in college wrestling. I mean, these, the round robin type things you see, you'll see them with scrimmages, you'll see them with preseason high school things. Very few high school tournaments are even run like this, in large. So, one, where was the genesis of the idea of this format? And two, how receptive were the college coaches to do this?
Well, so initially I ran into it, down in New Jersey with, Iron Horse. And they had a preseason tournament that was traditionally one of the toughest tournaments, preseason tournaments around. And when our guys got invited to it, it was invite only. You really had to be a stud to be invited to it. We went there and we realized they would have 5-man groups. And I loved the concept of it. So after a couple years being in that environment, I took that concept and added my own twist to it. And the twist was, we can get very creative. We don't need a 5-man round robin. We can make 4-man. We can make a 5-man. We can make modified 6. We can make modified 8. We even got into making modified 12s. And the sizing of these brackets allow for greater reach, if you want to be more inclusive to the field. and get guys in that bracket all together, it allows for a reasonable amount of matches, and it's anywhere between 3 and 4 matches is what people are traditionally looking for. So I took what I learned from the Iron Horse, and then I added my own twist to it and added a national flair to it, and it exploded at the high school level. And now this year we had over 40-something states represented at our fall classic for high school, and it's quickly becoming one of the preferred preseason tournaments and at the high school level. And coaches come to recruit it. We had 60-something college coaches there this year. So they recognize the format. They're very familiar with it because they're recruiting the tournament. And it's basically, the philosophy is putting like, quality, and kind together in the same bracket. And it sounds good on the high school level. On the collegiate level, sometimes it can be a little bit of a bloodbath. So a little bit over the top. So we've entered cautiously into the college world with this philosophy. We made some changes, but it's essentially the same philosophy mirrored over to the college side.
Yeah, you've still got the same facility. You're going to be at the Hudson Valley Community College in Troy, New York. Again, the same date, Sunday, November 13th. So the quality of teams that are coming here, and when you think about the potential matchups that you can sometimes not see with duels, because, we've seen with dual events, sometimes teams don't want to duel somebody that tough that early in the season in an event where they're not going to make any money on it. Say they would want that either to be at home or something. I mean, we've got Ohio State, Arizona State, Wisconsin, West Virginia, Lock Haven, Rider, NC State, Lehigh, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Buffalo, the Citadel on the Division I side, LIU Post from Division II, Ithaca from D3, as well as Cortland State. So you've got a really good group of college teams. And then when you factor in the amount of wrestlers that will get the minimum number of matches, we're looking at least 2 to 3. Division I's are allowed to bring 14. Division 2 and 3 are allowed to bring 12. So that's also a selling point.
Yes. So they get multiple entries, which is obviously a good thing for programs. They haven't determined their lineup, so to speak, yet. So they need to figure this stuff out. And quite honestly, this is part of the allure to the event, because they could put people in the same bracket if they so desire, from the same team, and be able to see who's going to come out on what side and how do they place. Similar to that of an open tournament, but this is not an open. It allows for a lot of control. And I guess that's the thing that makes this a little bit unique and different, where we know exactly who's going to be into the event. We know exactly how many matches you're going to have prior to the event. We know what time we're going to start. We know what time we're going to finish. We know precisely exactly how this is going to go down, if you will. And there's an element of control, so that if you have a guy that's coming off injury, you can say, hey, look, I think he's ready to compete, but it's his first time out since the injury. Can we put him in this bracket rather than that bracket? And those things are all taken into consideration in advance, and everybody agrees on it, and then we move forward. And it's been smooth so far.
Yeah, when I'm looking at this and just some of the preliminary brackets, of course, they're going to change. And you can pretty much, from a wrestling fan's perspective, you can almost kind of assume where, okay, these guys are probably going to be in here, so they're probably going to meet up. There are some exceptions where you've got some deeper weights where you just can't load up, as you said, the bloodbath. You can't just load everything up. But one question I did have is in terms of with these teams bringing it, most of these guys they're going to have to be attached, correct? Or you allow unattached competition?
Everybody's attached. Every single buddy in this event is attached. So there's no red shirts. It's all connected to their team.
Yeah, and how did that pitch go? Because sometimes coach, we want to bring especially if they can drive, they're like, yeah, can our red shirt freshmen come in? You're saying nope, this is all guys that are going to be wrestling, right?
Yeah, I mean if they want to go to an open tournament, the Binghamton Open is happening on the same day, and I've actually promoted them going there. Why not help them? They have an open tournament. It's just a different product. So it's not like we're arguing or fighting over the same thing. It's a completely different product. Open tournaments have a little less control of how they're set up and situated. You have the unknown, if you will, to a certain degree. And this is the exact opposite. We need to know exactly who's in and how many guys, and if there's an odd number, that creates a little bit of stress for us, so we try to round it off. So it's a little bit of the opposite mentality where there's a lot of we need to have it all laid out in advance and just a different product, if you will.
Yeah, and the one thing I'm looking at this and having worked with the Virginia Duels for a number of years and trying to work pools, to work matchups, to work seeds and bracketing, college coaches can be very picky about who they want to wrestle and when they want to wrestle them. We kind of touched on that earlier. This kind of throws that out of the window. It's like, okay, well, your individuals, you're going to get the matches you want with your kids for the most part, but you don't have to worry about like that. Well, we don't want to lose, some of that whole, protecting the ranking. Some coaches do that. Some coaches don't care. But, one thing that's probably going to be missing now is this is an event that saw Hofstra beat Minnesota. This is an event that saw Lehigh beat Oklahoma State. This is an event that saw Maryland arrive and beat Michigan. That's one thing we are going to miss now with this.
Sure. And I am a big proponent of duels. And who knows, maybe we go back to that. With the advent of what the changes that are occurring at Division I wrestling, maybe they're going to put an emphasis on dual meets that they count, and that will change and shift our philosophy on that. But for this year, we made a move, and it seems to be a popular move, extremely popular. It may not, we may have a void that we're going to miss out on exactly what you articulated, but from a program standpoint and guys, what's better for maybe the team at that point in that time, this may be the answer. And we'll wait and see. We'll see what the verdict is on that. But, to go to an open tournament, guys may be asked to wrestle 5 or 6 times sometimes if they lose, and then they have to wrestle back. And there's repercussions from that. Their bodies take a little bit of a beating, and maybe it's too much, too early, and a little less control than they would like. So this gives that control back or that protection, but in the same sense, you know exactly what you're going to get and the caliber you're going to get. So we're going to put those like quality and kind matches together, where if you got a young guy or an inexperienced guy or maybe an unproven guy, you can put them with all the same type of people so that they have successes too and their confidence can be built. Where if you have a veteran guy, maybe a national champion or national qualifiers or All-Americans, let's put them all together. And then, they're wrestling the ability they need, and, the RPI and all that kind of stuff kind of all comes together. So I get it, and I'm aware that we're going to lose some of that dual meet excitement and charisma, but maybe we're on to something that's going to revolutionize the sport here.
Yeah, because, Matt Storniolo had mentioned this similar type of concept on the T-Row and Funky show not that long ago. And I'm sitting there going, has he been reading Frank Popolizio's mind? The mini tournament aspect, so to speak, is kind of how this is. But one thing that I see this as a benefit for the college coaches who, they want to get that good competition. They may not want to have it be in a dual meet in a situation where they can't control the gate money. And with the open, sometimes you can go to an open depending on the part of the country you're in, and your first round's a JUCO kid. Doesn't count for your RPI or win percentage. Second round's a D3 kid. Well, it counts for your win-loss record, but it doesn't count for D1 versus D1 at the end of the year. Now you can say, all right, if you want to wrestle all D1 guys, great. If you've got a kid that's as you said, attached, he's ready to go, but he might, that D3 is not really going to hurt his his overall record or qualifying points.
For instance, we have 125 pounds right now. The way the brackets are set, we have one wrestler from Division I in a bracket with all other non-Division I guys. And his respective coach called up and said, we have to take a look at this bracket because this is our potential starter. So they're deep there. You know, they have maybe 2 or 3 guys, and either of the 3 may start. So we're going to make an adjustment there so that that athlete is not in that bracket, and we can make some moves where we put in another guy that maybe is the 3rd string guy or 2nd string guy, and it's going to be a non-issue for where the RPI is not really going to matter. So this is a case in point where this is what they like. They like to have an opinion on it, and they have some control in it. It's not like they have total control, but they have some control. And I think that's a benefit. I think that's what's going to make us as a sport evolve and get better. You know, sometimes these guys come out of tournaments and they're out for another week, you know, or 10 days or 2 weeks. And maybe it's just at that particular time they need this. And then the next time, you know, a little deeper into the season, they can get a little bit more aggressive and do something different. But at the timing that we have, we're really the 2nd week in the season. I think this speaks to their needs. Obviously, we got 16 teams that are all really high-end teams in their respective divisions that bought into this. So they must obviously look at it a certain way.
And a couple things you mentioned the respective divisions. What's the response from the coaches at LIU Post and in Ithaca at Cortland, who you know Ithaca and Cortland, especially in Division III, very strong programs. LIU Post, a new program out in Long Island, and you know sometimes throwing them to the wolves in Division I dual meets doesn't really help them, other than saying, all right, we get to wrestle a Division I team. What's been the response from guys at LIU Post and Ithaca and Cortland about the opportunity to get their guys matches against Division I competition, but not necessarily, and other, you know, athletes in their divisions, but not necessarily have it show up 55-0 on the scoreboard?
They're extremely excited. As a matter of fact, they're nudging me to put them in higher brackets. Let's get them tested. Let's get them pushed. They're all about it. They want to do this. And they want to get something different. You know, they don't want to just see Cortland against Ithaca. They do that 3 times a year. So again, this is part of the premise of this event. We can work the magic to say, all right, let's move this guy around. Can we move him up 1? Can we move a guy down 1? And get them different looks, guys that they're never going to see. And that obviously that affords them opportunity, and that's why they're excited about it. So, and again, look, these guys you nailed it. They're national level Division III programs, but they're also right here in New York. So it affords us an opportunity to showcase these great programs that are really housed right here in New York State.
Another thing, and having run all these events on the high school level, you've run various dual meet events, various events like the Journeymen Classic. From a college perspective, and your brother Pat's the head coach at NC State, 3 matches, that seems to be the honeypot number when it comes to, all right, how many matches can we get our guys in one day without, you know, wasting the trip and then not beating them up? 3 seems to be the number.
3's the soft spot. Now, in a situation like this, because we've afforded them the opportunity to bring multiple entries, we're not going to be as fortunate to mandate everybody's going to get 3 matches. But maybe somebody's going to have to get 4. And we realize that. And some of the teams have actually specifically requested 4. But if you averaged it all out, the number is like 3.2 of what people want. You know, so it's more toward the 3 than it is to the 4. But there are teams in there that welcome 4 matches, and we'll try to give it to them. So if we're in a situation where we have an odd number of athletes in a specific weight, then we're going to be forced to do a 5-man round robin, which obviously gives every guy 4 matches.
Now let's talk about some of these brackets a little bit, as we alluded to. I mean, of course, things are subject to change, but just looking at how they're working out, we've got, let's look at 125, for example, where as of right now, as we record this on November 7th, you'll have 4 pools of brackets, and you've got, guys like Darian Cruz, Skylar Petrie, Jose Rodriguez, J.R. Wirt, Christian Moody, Patrick Kearney. Those are from Lehigh, Minnesota, Ohio State Rider, Oklahoma, the Citadel in an A pool. And then you'll have different schools in the B and then the C and the D. I guess that's how you're going to do it. But you have the top, you're seeing matchups and the separation. What goes into, all right, we're going to have Skylar Petrie and Darian Cruz up top and J.R. Wirt and Jose Rodriguez down the bottom.
Balance. So you have a couple different factors you have to look at. Number one, these guys don't want to travel all the way across the United States and wrestle somebody in their own conference. That's number one. Or they don't want to wrestle somebody that they're going to dual meet next week, like Ohio State and Arizona State. So this affords us some control over where do we put guys. If you're forced to put guys from the same conference together, at least you can put them and separate them on one side of the bracket or the other. I should say one side of the round robin or the other. Because again, these are pools that they have to wrestle their pool and then they cross over. If they win their pool, then they're going to wrestle the winner on the other side of the respective pool. If they take second, they wrestle second, third, so on and so forth. So when you ask me what goes into this, one, we want to pair like quality and kind together, but within reason. We don't want to put it so that it's an absolute total bloodbath where every single match is torturous to these guys because it's early on. But for the most part, it's really good guys in that first bracket and really good guys in the second bracket. So maybe we feathered it a little bit to make 2 brackets worth of goodness, if you will.
Yeah, one of those weight class people are eyeing, and we talked about this prior to getting started on the show, is 174, where you got, All-American Ethan Ramos from North Carolina, Zaid Valencia, Nick Wanzik, Bo Jordan, Nick Reenan from your brother's squad down at NC State. So how are they separated? I know some things are still going to be working with this, but when you look at a bracket like that and you're like, okay, we don't want a bloodbath, but people want to see some of these guys hit.
Sure. So one of the things that we would have liked to see was Bo Jordan versus Valencia. That was one that would have been a really, people in the wrestling community want to see it. So we presented that initially, and we got some pushback only because both teams are going to be dueling 6 days later, and it makes sense. When you hear that each of the coaches come together and say, "Hey, look, we're going to do this 6 days later," and they're most likely, if they both won through, they would see each other in our final. They wouldn't even have another match between now and then. And, when you hear that, it makes sense. So we made adjustments. And when you make adjustments like that, you got to spread things around and make the next best situation. And how do I know? We were looking more from an entertainment standpoint, not from who's going to win and who's going to be the successor here. So it may be even better at the way we have it situated now. And so that's how we've come up with. It's got nothing really to do with, predetermining things like I have an opinion on something. We're taking everything into account. We've asked these coaches to give us their essentially like a tiering of their athlete. Is this guy a tier 1, a tier 2, a tier 3? And then we try to keep, 1s and 2s together and 2s and 3s together so that it's not off balance. So we don't have a 1 wrestling a 3, almost like a peewee, a youth tournament mentality, right? In essence, it's in its simplest form. That's what we tried to do here. So when you put in all these factors together, 1, we don't want interconference. 2, we don't want rivalries. 3, we want like, quality, and kind together, and so on and so forth. And then that allowed us to come up with what we have. It took hours. It takes hours upon hours. And quite frankly, we only had really 1 or 2 pushbacks of all the brackets.
Yeah, and of course, with that little pushback, this goes into back with the dual discussion. From a headache perspective, from a tournament director, it seems like this is going to afford you a lot less of a headache compared to trying to pair up 20 teams and say, well, we got a guy dinged up. We need somebody not as tough. I mean, you got a lot less room for complaint, even though you have more variables.
Yeah, nobody wants to go 0-3. Let's start off with that. Okay? And that's the truth. I don't care what coach it is, from what program, of what level. And I don't want anybody to go 0-3. I don't. I mean, we're here to promote wrestling and promote programs and promote good wrestling. But the truth is, people go 0-3. People go 1-2. People go 3-0. That's the nature of athletics. There's going to be a winner and a loser. And, you know, with the event that we had set up for the last 13 years, it was predetermined duels. So all this battling of who wrestles who had to be done prior to game day. And, you know, I give the coaches a lot of credit. There was a lot of stretching and a lot of compromise. And then in some cases, we would get at an impasse. And it was tough. It would be a lot of headaches. But it was worth it in the end because it produced some great matchups. As you can tell, you've articulated that in the earlier segment here, that we've had some great battles, terrific battles.
Yeah, one thing that I always wondered, and there's one event that I use as an example. It was the Lone Star Duels, which was a great event down in Texas for a number of years. I went down. They had the best hospitality room for a while until my home tournament, the Virginia Duels, they lost that title, then they took it back from them. Because the Lone Star Duels was a tremendous event, and they had good teams in there, but it was frustrating from a coverage standpoint when I was with Intermat, and as a wrestling fan standpoint, it's like, okay, we've got some of these power teams in the same gym, and they're wanting to wrestle Utah Valley, and who was a provisional D1 at the time. They're going to wrestle a Division II team. Or, you know, they don't want to wrestle Division II team. I mean, it's like, okay, we're going to wrestle. I think Oklahoma State one year wrestled Army, Navy, and Air Force. Okay, that's cool. But at the same point, you know, the top 5 teams only want to wrestle the Utah Valleys and the Sacred Hearts of the world. I mean, that's got to be frustrating from a fan standpoint and a tournament director standpoint.
Yeah, and, you know, my job is to stretch, you know, and get them slightly uncomfortable. You can't make them completely uncomfortable, but you can make them slightly uncomfortable. And usually they see the benefit in that, and usually they agree. And it's not too far off their point. You know, I can't make Oklahoma State wrestle Iowa at our tournament. It's early on, and they're not going to want to do that. They just are not going to want to do that for various reasons. But you know, maybe they'll wrestle West Virginia. Maybe they'll wrestle, you know, NC State, you know, whatever it was at that time. And that's like a little bit uncomfortable, but doable. And that's you know, you got to come in there informed. You got to be prepared to why you think this is going to be a good match and here are the benefits for both squads. Again, you got to make it so it's a win-win for everybody. And I don't mean that literally, but there are little battles. You know, we go back to the origin of this thing. And when I would help out my brother, he didn't have the budget when he was at Binghamton at that time to see any of these big programs. None of them. It was impossible. So to have the ability to wrestle Binghamton or Binghamton wrestle Iowa State at that time, you know, that was a huge thing. Or Binghamton wrestling Iowa. You know, they had Iowa on their schedule. That was a big deal. So there's benefits both ways. There's benefits in the little guy wrestling the big guy, like they just articulated. And then you get to another point where you start having success. These programs start actually winning. And it's like nobody really wants to wrestle them. They're dangerous, and they're not a big name, maybe, so to speak. And you got to try to protect those guys too, and try to fight for them to get some of those matchups. And the coaches usually are pretty good about it, and they listen within reason. I mean, they're not going to. Again, I can't reiterate it enough. They're not going to get themselves totally uncomfortable, but I think they do a fair job.
Do you think maybe it's a byproduct of a team's success that they're kind of looked at to carry the flag? Well, you should do this because it's good for the sport. Do you think the power programs like the Iowas, the Minnesotas, the Oklahoma States, the Ohio States, the Penn States are looked at having to do that more so than they should? I mean, if they come to this type of event, but back when it was a dual format, you're like, well, you should be wrestling this because it's good for the sport. I mean, do you think they get that unfair pressure in those situations?
I mean, those guys are battling constantly. They're battling everything. They carry everything on their back. So it's tough. It really is. It's tough. I don't begrudge it. I mean, or them. They're in a very, very difficult position. People are constantly pulling on them, whether it's people from, within their own colleagues. Hey, I need your help. I need, or people like me that are promoting and creating events. Hey, we need your help. Or the just at large pressure from the fans. Hey, we want to see this. In the end, their responsibility, I get it, is to the sport of wrestling, but specifically their responsibility is to get their guys ready and to have them perform at the end of the year at the national tournament. And you can't forget that. So they're going to do what's best for their team. And good coaches will tell you that. They'll say, this is what's best for us right now, and we need to be careful early on and then have that gradual build up. So I even have battles with my brother about, what's best for whatever he's got. And I'm pulling on him to say, I need you over here. Would you consider doing this? And if he doesn't feel it's good for his team, then it doesn't happen.
So personally, this is also a big deal for you. You're a high school coach. You're a club coach. You've got the opportunity to bring Division I college level wrestling to the Albany area, the capital region. How fulfilling has this event been for you for not only the area, but to see your athletes have an opportunity to witness high-level college wrestling and give them something to aspire to, not just your kids, but all the high school kids in that area, that this will be the only chance they get to see Division I high-level college wrestling all year?
Well, I think it's probably the most important thing that I personally can do. I think back to the vision that I had 14 years ago, and I think we've realized it. We've come full circle. And when you get guys like Wisdowski coming through and guys like Real Budo, he's not in my club, but he's for one of my buddies' club from Iowa style. And when you look at guys like that have, when they were little, they were coming to watch it, and then they aspired to be it and actually then wrestled in it. You put all those things together, and I feel confident in saying that this is critically important, and it worked. It actually worked, and it's. I'll never forget. I had the idea. I articulated the idea to somebody, and this was a very veteran, respected high school coach in our area, and he said, "You're wasting your time. It's been tried before in this area, and it will never happen." And that made me so determined to make sure it did happen, and that it did succeed, and that it was relevant. And 14 years later, I think that is the case. I think we've done some good things with it, and hopefully this is just another piece of the evolution of it. The way we made this little change, and we may go back to dual meets again. I don't know. I don't want to limit myself, but again, we're getting young guys to watch the highest level that exists and in the sport of wrestling, and they at the collegiate level. Let me stipulate that, and they get to dream about it. That's it.
Last thing we need to mention, actually, there's a couple more things we want to mention. One of them, though, is this. You've got these high school studs that are also going to be in the mix here. What can you tell us about that?
Yes.
That matchup there. There's a list of them here that are just, these are high quality high school. Still not regular season matches, but we're looking at high quality stuff here.
Yes, we have always we call this a 3-ring circus, basically. So we have really advanced youth that are wrestling at area, and we have high school all-star guys that are matchups that are happening in a select area as well. So these guys are on the cusp of committing, or they've already committed, or they're guys that are up and coming throughout the nation, and they will get the opportunity to feel special out there. And I'm not saying they don't feel special doing it when they win Fargo or the Flow Nationals and stuff like that, but this is just a unique environment. You're wrestling in the same building as big-time collegiate wrestling. And look, out of all the events I do to try to recruit people to be a part of it, this is the easiest one. They all want to do it. It's a single match against another big-time guy, high school guy. So it's ranked wrestler versus ranked wrestler. And we try to get a New York ranked wrestler against somebody else, or a guy from New England against somebody else. And we've been able to do that this year. I think we have 15 matches, some real stellar matchups. We got a crew coming out of Central Florida Wrestling Academy. They're Mike Palazzo's guys. He's bringing 4 of his studs up. And we got the Bison Wrestling Club out of Pennsylvania is bringing 2 or 3 of their guys. We even have one of our own guys from the Journeymen Club, Tyler Barnes, who was a double Fargo finalist this year for cadet. He'll get to showcase himself at the event. And it affords us stuff like that. And some people come just for the high school matches. They find that more entertaining and exciting than the college one. Everyone's got their own perspective and preference.
Yeah, I mean, you got guys like Drew Matten in here, KJ Fenstermacher. I mean, I could go through the list. Trent Hidley. I mean, you could name them, and every single one of them is a name that these high school fans are going to be like, whoa, what? Whoa, what? Whoa, what? I'm looking at it, and I don't follow high school nearly as much as I used to, and I'm like, whoa, what? Really? But another thing you're doing with this, not this event, but we want to touch on this a little bit because this shows what you're doing in the state of New York. And this is up in April, and we'll finish up with the Collegiate Classic here on the high school event as we wrap up. But we want to mention that you've got this World Camp that's coming in April, and we want to get it out there now to explain about what this thing is. You've got what 19, 20 countries committed to this already. This thing is exploding.
Yeah. It's exploding. I've been doing this now for 14, 15 years. From an event planning standpoint, and I feel pretty confident I don't get rattled at all about anything. I've had nightmares occur, and I can get through them pretty smooth. This one has actually got me a little bit uneasy because of the level is so amazingly high, and it's almost taking on its own form here. It's like spinning to a place that I didn't even expect it to, where they're calling me up. I don't even know how they're getting my phone number or my contact information. But the other night I had a call come in from Tajikistan, and they're like, we want to be a part of this and what you're doing over in April. So the word is spreading. Right now I'll list some of the programs that we have committed. And again, this is going to be a world camp that we're going to do over spring break, and then it'll parlay into a tournament that we do. And again, we're talking from 18 years old and below, so it's essentially high school age guys that are participating in the freestyle capacity. And again, we got guys from obviously the United States, Canada, Great Britain, Belarus, Georgia, Russia, Kazakhstan, Moldova, Hungary, Vietnam, Bolivia, Italy, France, South Korea, Guinea, Liberia, and I just got word Mongolia is in. So that's who's in now. I know Azerbaijan is also chewing on it. So in essence, this camp is going to be off the chart, and the competition, it's world level stuff.
Are we going to make sure the Mongolians keep their clothes on?
I hope not. I hope we have some excitement where they – no, I think they've learned their lesson. I think they're going to be bundled up pretty good.
Well, it's New York, and it's that time of year. You never know. You could get snow. or you could be 70 and gorgeous. So you never know.
That's right. That's right.
Now, as we wrap up talking about the Collegiate Classic coming up November 13th at Hudson Valley Community College in Troy, New York, if you're in the area, stop on by. But if you can't make it, live on Flow Wrestling, results you can follow on Turnaflex.com, TOURNAFLEX.com. And of course, if you're in the arena, you're going to hear my partner in crime, Brian Hazard, who's been a long time announcer with your events. And him and I both tag teamed the Journeyman Classic last year as he had a family obligation. So I got roped into the New York event, and always good to have Brian there. You've got a good relationship streaming there with Flow, and then Turnaflex. Good way to keep up with the event. So these are things that you've got to be proud of here too.
I am. I'm big on relationships. I think when you look at anybody that's successful in whatever their passion is, they're usually surrounded by great relationships. I know from my standpoint, the volunteers that we have been with me for double-digit years, and the people that work my events, I could say the same. And Hazard's one of them. I even go back with you quite a bit, so that when we did have a situation and we had a need, maybe you were a little more comfortable to come and help, and you did that. So the next time that we need help, maybe it's an easy yes, and stuff like that matters when you're producing something and you're feeling like, you need help and you need to put this thing to a different level and put all these parts together. You need people that you can depend on and that do a great job. So Hazard's one of them. You're one of them. My volunteers are one of them. And that's just what it is.
All right, Fred, we got a little segment what we haven't done with you in a while. We're going to do it's the short time segment. I'm still working for different names of this, but I'm going to ask you 10 questions, rapid fire. I want the first thing that comes to your mind, no thinking. Are you up to the challenge?
I'm scared, but yeah.
All right. This has nothing to do with the chickens that we can hear in your backyard either.
Good.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Question 1, the best match you've ever watched?
Oh, man. Best match would be John Smith versus, I can't remember the name. It was with John Smith. It was an international match. If I can't think, I can't do that. Go ahead. Yeah.
Number 2, you win the Olympic gold. What are you having for dinner?
Steak.
Who's the best wrestler people don't talk about?
Best wrestler people don't talk about. I'm going to go with Pat Smith. I don't think they talk about him enough.
The all-time best favorite flavor of Gatorade?
The great kind. I don't know if it's is that Rush?
I'm hearing Riptide Rush, I assume.
Riptide, yeah, that's it.
Best wrestling movie?
Not many to choose from, but I'm going to go with Vision Quest.
Favorite international wrestler?
Sophia.
You win the Powerball. What's the first college wrestling program you're going to start from scratch?
Albany.
Your favorite Italian restaurant on the planet?
It's in Italy. It's not here.
That's all you need to say. What's your spirit animal?
What's my spirit animal? Probably the white-tailed deer.
All right, and who's better looking and better dressed, you or your brother Pat?
He's probably better dressed. I got to go with more hair and better looking.
All right, we've come to the end of the shenanigans that is that short time segment. Frank, thanks for coming on the program again. Quality event. Check out the information about all the other events at journeymanwrestling.com. Follow it on Flow this weekend, turnaflex.com. And if you're there, hang out and listen to Brian Hazard. So, Frank, any final thoughts as we head into this glorious college and high school wrestling season from where you sit?
I think it's going to be exciting. It's something new, and we're trying to revolutionize some of the stuff that's been out there for a long time. So let's give it a shot and see how it goes.
I'd like to thank Frank Popolizio for spending time with us on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. If you're going to go up to the Journeymen A6 Collegiate Classic. Check out the preview story I'm writing, and I've done it for Frank for a number of years. It'll give you a breakdown of these brackets, these matches, things that we talked about here on the show and had a lot of fun with. A couple things I had a lot of fun with was episode 290 with Don Sayanga, and that's one that I keep going back to. I talked about it all weekend while I was down in Iowa announcing the preseason nationals. And Brian Keck, fantastic tournament, by the way. Fantastic tournament. You, sir, once you find your neck, you will be a complete human being. But no, I'm just kidding, brother. It was a great time. First tournament I've announced since the Olympics. So my wife imposed travel ban is over. And it wasn't, I got to be fair to Abby, because it wasn't that it was like super wife imposed, but on July 8th, and today I record this one, it's two things. It is my mom's birthday. It's election day, as I put this out. Election day. It's my mom's birthday, and she's a twin, and her twin sister, my Aunt Geneva, was actually born on the 7th. So they straddled that midnight hour. So I've got a mom that's a twin, and her sister was born on a different day. So that's always unique. It was also my late dog Linus's birthday, as I celebrated when I was like a little kid. I think Linus, man, he was put down when I was like 8. Geez, that was like almost 30 years ago that I remember my dog dying. I guess that's one of those things. That's tied to November 7th, not necessarily November 8th, which again, happy birthday to my mom. She's put up with all this wrestling stuff for a long, long time. And happy 4-month, I don't think you don't call it a 4-month birthday because, birthdays are annual things, but 4 months old, Ruby Rio, yes, my youngest daughter. Again, sharing a birthday with Jordan Burroughs, which is kind of cool. But Ruby is now 4 months old. My mom, I'm not going to it's never polite to tell a woman's age. But my mom, been retired for a couple years now. So happy birthday to my mom back in Pocosin, Virginia. A couple other people I want to thank, and it's for their input and their efforts to promote this show via a little bit of giving. If you go to matttalkonline.com/join the team, you can actually contribute monthly to this network and keep this show rolling and keep other shows rolling, such as the Hall of Fame Legends podcast, which, when funds come in, we get enough to produce the show. We put them out. Most recent one was about 2 months ago with Joe Gonzalez, who went into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2015 as a distinguished member. But Clint Park's the latest team member, as he went through and plugged it on in. So he's got access to our Facebook group and some other things, as well as Denny Deal. We mentioned him quite a bit in the Don Sayanga episode, but Denny Deal, one of the great wrestling historians and Lehigh backers and supporters for a long time. Guy's got a wealth of knowledge. Used to put out a wrestling magazine. Actually, it was a wrestling newspaper called National Mat News. I actually got a chance to see a couple of these things. This weekend when I was in Iowa, I went down to the Gable Museum and visited with Kyle Klingman and Andy Hamilton. Andy Hamilton now with Track Wrestling, based out of the Gable Museum as far as his home office goes. And somebody had delivered Ed Ewalt, the old wrestling coach at Wheaton Central, his archives of stuff to the wrestling museum. Went through it. Oh my goodness. Ed, I don't know if you're listening, man. I want to know what your filing system was, because we've got binders of newspaper articles cut out, not just from amateur wrestling news, but from wrestling magazines, from Wrestling Masters, which was Gary Abbott's old magazine, from Scholastic Wrestling News, which now is known as Wrestling USA Today, USA Today. Geez, I'm getting all sidetracked. Is now Wrestling USA. So he's got one that's just labeled results, and then one that's miscellaneous, and the one that's history. There are hundreds of these Blue Teachers planners out there. So, and there's some binders there with some information that I am absolutely going to digitize and give to the hall and use for my almanacs, basically, which is one of those things that I'm digitizing history too, as I talked about with Don last episode. But oh my goodness, the stuff that I'm unearthing here via donations to the hall and my relationship with Kyle and Jack Carnifex and Leroy Smith, there is stuff that's going to be available that we have not had in the sport of wrestling. All I just need is the time to do it. So you want to see those projects continue, go to MattTalkOnline.com, join the team, contribute. I can take care of that stuff because time is money. It's one of these things. So other things to talk about. Think I'm going to do some more blogging this year. Didn't do much of it last year. I saw some success with my Rio blog, so I'll probably be putting out a weekly blog on the site about just general things in wrestling. It was kind of a successful feature when I was with the Open Mat, and a couple things when I was with USA Wrestling. But I always like to focus on things that not everybody focuses on. I look at things that are newsworthy from a general sense of wrestling, not just the top 77 Division I teams. I'm announcing the NAIA championships this year. I'm announcing Division III championships. I just got my confirmation that I'm back on the mic with Brian Hazard at the Division I championships this year in St. Louis. So I see a lot of wrestling in a lot of divisions. This site at Mad Talk Online is the only place you've got California Community College standings. You've got NAIA standings, Division II, Division III, Division I standings. Junior colleges, the NJCA I'm working on, because those guys need to get their results out more frequently and more expansively. I guess using track wrestling would be the case. But I'm the only guy in the country putting this stuff together, and it's for you. So if you like what you're seeing, MadTalkOnline.com/join the team. Welcoming Clay Sauerteig and Garrett Carr to the Mad Talk Podcast Network. They just released episode 2 of the Black Shoe Diaries Matchcast. That's it's not an official Penn State Wrestling podcast. It's like the unofficial Penn State Wrestling podcast, because the guys at Black Shoe Diaries do a pretty good job through SB Nation of putting out some good Penn State content. So welcome them. Episode 2 is out there. Check them out on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, and whatnot. Daily wrestling news at madtalkonline.com/news. You get that every morning delivered to your email. And, of course, links to the rankings and the tournament results. Not the rankings. Links to the standings, the scores, and the tournament results are also in there. So get it first thing in the morning when you wake up. That's all I got for now. My name is Jason Bryant. I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me, because you've always got time. Say it with me now. For sure time. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Royce Alger and his wonderful voicemail.
It's 6 o'clock, it's early morning. It's Andy Wendler, he's on his horn. He came to pick me up to walk some corn. And I'm leaving August Stanwood. I know that can't be good. Oh, babe, that place sucks. It's 12 o'clock and where's my lunch? That's Toby Lynn, he's got Captain Crunch. Watch your food, boys. Slobber bobbers knees. But I'm leaving, gone to Stanwood. I know that it can't be good. Oh, babe, that place sucks. Stinking Lincoln, what a ball. Stanwood, stand still, I've heard 'em all. Sleazy women, greasy biker boys. But still, every morning about 6 a.m., Andy Wendler, Randy Tallman, me, and my little brother, we're leaving, gone to Stanwood. I know that it can't be good. Oh, babe, that place sucks. Clarence Loudon, holding to rural Tipton, what a slew. Boys, I'd rather visit Vietnam. But still, every morning about 6 a.m., Andy Wendler, Randy Tallman, me, and my little brother, we're leaving, gone to Stanwood. I know that it can't be good. Oh, babe, that place sucks. Oh, babe, that place sucks.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.